Right, y'all. Peace. Happy Sunday. We are about to go live with an amazing woman. It's Artivist Talks. This is number 14. Wow, I can't believe how this series is going so fast and so purposeful. This all started with yeah, these talks have been great. This month we're highlighting all powerful women doing amazing things, and Luz is continuing. Yeah, Luz, thank you for joining us. Just wanted to say thank you so much for
Make sure I can
blessing us
hear you.
on this fantastic day for Women's Month. And yeah, we appreciate you so much kindly. Shout out to everybody in the chat. If you have questions for Luz, I am going to put a little pin thing. There's a little thought bubble with a question mark. You can ask questions for Luz in here. We'll give it a minute or so and then we'll start it. But yeah, we appreciate you so much, Luz. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Of course. Nah, thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited to be a part of the series, especially this month, Women's Her Story Month.
Hmm, we got you. We got you. Get these headphones on and get ready to get it on.
Right?
All right. Looks like
Might be the same.
we got a good amount of folks in here. I'm gonna pin that question. So this is how I know Luz through an amazing artist on our roster named Beth Bliss. So Luz I consider her a multi-dimensional being. She's all over doing some great things. But from what I know, there's a lot of singing involved. There's theater, there's directing, there's youth work, there's community work, there's social justice. This is like the quintessential artist energy. But Luz, please introduce the people to yourself. Anything I missed out on, or just let them know a little bit about you before we do our opening question. But thank you
Nah,
again.
yeah, for
And
sure.
your work is recognized and appreciated. And thank you for doing this special Women's Month series with us.
Thank you. So, yes, my name is Luz Maria. I'm from the Bronx, originally born in the Dominican Republic. I'm an immigrant out here. So yeah, like Y says, I do a lot of things. I'm a theater creator. I am focused on bringing together community through theater because I
Mm.
think that people who do theater, we have really big egos. So we have to use
Mm.
our beautiful big egos to shine a light on things that are happening in this world and, give space for other people to tell their stories. Um,
I
yeah,
love.
I'll get more into that in a second. But yeah, youth work also has been something relatively new,
Mm-hmm.
something that I didn't know I wanted to focus a part of my life on, but it's something that came
Mm-hmm.
from a gig, right? I got hired for a gig to direct a musical, and it was
Mm.
with my former high school. And of course, I was thinking of it as like something lucrative. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna graduate college, and I got my first gig. And the moment I stepped back
Mm.
into the school and I met those kids, I knew that's where I belonged, and it jump started like the whole wanting to work with youth with me because I felt like it reminded me
Wow.
of what it was to be a teenager, especially in those same
Mm.
hallways that I was a teenager in. And it sparked that fire in me of like I want to be who I didn't have when I was here.
Mm.
And ever since then, right, I've been focused on participating more in programs that have to do with youth and learning more. So we spoke about Beth. Beth
Mm-hmm.
was amazing, and she co-facilitated a training for artists who wanted to work with youth.
Mm.
And it's something that I learned a lot in, and being in community and in space, it gave me a lot more confidence going into where I'm doing
Mm.
now.
Luz, we did it. We had to shine the light. I had to put the light background for Luz. La Luz, you bringing the light with us. So we always open these interviews with artivism, right? Artivism is a hybrid word. Some may be familiar with, some may not. I shout out to the civil rights movement around that era when I think around the bell hooks, when I started reading that, it got brought to my attention studying things like the Black Panther Party, and artivism was used as art and activism. But in
Hmm.
these modern times, creative expressions defines activism as activating our organisms to their highest potential. So basically using art to activate ourselves because everyone is an artist. Everyone has a form of creative expression. And
Yep.
we want us all to pour into our cup till it overfills, right? We don't want to fall victim to burnout anymore. We don't necessarily have to be
Yeah.
political with this, but cooking dinner for your friends is a part of activism. Working out and saying, yo, let's go do something. Let's throw down our EBT together and get something instead of
Yeah.
spending $100 at a restaurant, right? all these things can be modern forms of activism beyond just protests and that. But we want to ask you, Luz, because you're knee deep in this. What is artivism to you, and how are you expressing it, and how does it come up in your
Yeah.
life and your work?
So artivism to me is like you're saying, like activating your organism to make something happen. But for specifically for me, it's that reminder of like we are all artists.
Mm,
Everybody has the ability to be creative in one way or another.
mm,
Something
mm,
as quote unquote small as cooking dinner, right?
mm,
Or something
mm,
as just like my grandma lives across the hall from me. Me in the morning getting up to go say, you know, buenos dias, abuela, to give her a kiss and like for her to say a prayer over me, you
mm,
know? That's artivism right there. Or like, you
mhm,
know, when I'm with my grandma and like I'm talking to her about the things that I'm doing and like, you know, she's from a completely different generation. She was born in
mhm,
1940. Like
mm,
she's 83. Like me being able to share these parts of myself with her, her coming to a theater to sit down and like watch a show. Like my grandma's never been to like a fancy theater, but everything that I do, she pulls up, you know, and she supports it.
mm,
And being able to expose her to something new, something that like she can turn off all the family stress and watch a show and like be able to celebrate music, right? And like look at all these beautiful things. That right there, that to me, that's artivism because I'm exposing
mm,
her to something that she has never had access to. And I'm exposing her to it for free. And like with a
mm,
completely different like familial lens, right? So she feels like a certain level of attachment to it. And
mm,
that's something really beautiful. And I'm grateful to have been able to like form a career where I'm able to share so much with my family and my friends that everything that I do is reflected on stage, even if the musical
mm,
has nothing to do with like real life, right? So
mhm,
like the last thing I worked on was The Wiz,
mm,
and just being able to like sit down with those kids and dissect the script. So like, you know, the story of Dorothy, she's coming from like, you know, Kansas, she gets brought, we made it New York City, right? And it was a
mhm,
lot of fun.
mhm,
We spoke about like conditions that would have made the scarecrow homeless and what that is
mm,
like being a houseless person. Like, you know, the actors experience with like seeing homelessness across New York City and what that means. So yeah, that's part of my goal now with what I'm doing is exposing young people to those ideas and making those connections now. Because you don't have to wait to college to, you know, walk
mhm,
into a women's studies class or like, you
mhm,
know, something so like specific. It's everywhere and we should be able to recognize our experiences everywhere in this world. So for me, that's really artivism. It's being able to see these things and identify them at whatever age, my grandma's age or, you know, a youth's age.
mm. Lose, man. We have to drop the gems on you because the kids are jewels right now. I love it. I want to reinforce a lot of what you said. This is multi-generational. Anything could
Yep.
be remixed. You took what could have been a conventional, hey, let's just follow the script, but you connected it to the homelessness, to the gentrification. And that's because you were able to use your artistry as a lens, right? You also
Yeah.
spoke about giving back to community and really taking something. You went back to your old high school, and then now you what could have been just a run and go quick this and this. You put intention and purpose into it. And I want that to kind of inform my next question. You have a lot of different artistic mediums, take us back
Hmm.
to Little Luz when she was just like maybe a spark, before the big light that you are. I know it was a journey. And how did these artistic mediums in life, I know you didn't just roll
Hmm.
out of bed and become like this. I'm sure there's a sequence of events. You talked about immigration from DR and coming through the BX, the mainlanders, shout out our Boogie Down Bronx
Yeah.
folks. But tell us a little bit about your journey and how it led you to this point where you are serving community and expressing yourself in so many beautiful ways.
Yeah. So, you know, growing up in the Bronx comes with its difficulties. So I felt like just being raised here, I
Hmm.
was kind of like being brought up to be revolutionary because everything that I was
Mm,
seeing growing up as a child, you know, you might not be able to like identify something with language, but you know, it makes you feel uncomfortable and you know, it
mm,
makes you feel like, okay, this is not right. So, growing up in certain conditions, like growing up around drugs, growing up
Mm-hmm.
around sex work, growing up like, it was a lot. It was challenging
Mm-hmm.
growing up like in a poor household, being a food stamp kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things informed who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
But it was tough growing up, right? There was a lot of crying. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like of that uncomfortable feeling that I'm expressing to you guys that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what to call it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know to call it like capitalism is causing this and like, my
Mm-hmm.
mom is like working like a dog because of this. I didn't know how to identify those things, but they always did, cause me harm and cause me upset. So, also being from DR, like I had an amazing teacher when I came here and I joined because I was a little rebellious. I didn't want to learn English apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So I was here, we came here and I was 2 years old. So, my language box was still very much open, very easy to learn the language.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I was like completely against it. And I was in a preschool where like it was bilingual. And my teachers would tell me all the time, like, Luce, you have to learn how to speak English. And I'm like, no, why? Like, we all speak Spanish here. Like, there's no point. So when I
Mm-hmm.
got, when I was moving up in school and I got to kindergarten, I had to go to a completely different school. That school
Mm-hmm.
was not bilingual anymore. There were teachers that, spoke Spanish, but they weren't bilingual. So I ended up having to be in ESL. And I was in ESL for like 7 years. And my
Wow.
ESL teacher was the person who got me into like being creative, so my writing. So we used to do like a lot of like journal entries to find my voice so that, I can like learn how to use words correctly. And from there, it stemmed to like her, involving me in like writing competitions. And that's when like
Mm-hmm.
my poetry started. In eighth grade, I was exposed to like a great workshop from La Bruja, Amigas de la
Mm.
Luz.
Shout out to La Bruja.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Legend.
that also like opens, like kind of worms in me. I finally kind of like found words. I learned how to use words to describe how I was feeling, all that uncomfortability inside of me. And yeah, for a while I wanted to be a rapper when I was little.
Hey,
I used
that's
to
that Bronx in you. Everybody got to rap in the Bronx. It's
I used to
mandatory.
like sit down and
Yeah.
like write, whack little like diss tracks to people I didn't
Ah!
like at school.
Ah!
And I was, I made a couple of like deep things, right? And sometimes I look back at that stuff and I can't believe that I was like 10, 11 writing those things. But like it definitely has informed who I am. But yeah, then I moved on to when I went to high school.
Mhm.
I found like a really amazing friends that expanded my creativity even more and challenged me to like start doing theater. I was a freshman in high school and I had never done like a theater audition, but my
Mhm.
new group of friends like grabbed me and said like let's do this thing. So,
Mm.
that started a whole passion inside of me and to this day I'm doing theater.
Woo! Lose, I knew it. That Bronx energy's big over here. Bringing it down. That mainlanders. I gotta throw up my X for the heart. We out here. So
Yeah,
Luz,
you already know.
it's the journey, right? I knew it. There was so many key pivotal figures that I want to recap in what you just said.
Mm,
You turned the lemon into lemonade. The adversity of being uh coming up bilingual, but starting as a Spanish native speaker, saying that yo, I have this community, we already do it. But when you went to another level of schooling, you had a great teacher that showed you, and then that opened up the door for poetry and rap and all
yeah,
these other things that were part of your environment, right? You also said that as you grew into high school and you went into theater, it was a group. So I'm seeing a thread of community
yeah,
being involved, which is a big part of what you work. So I want you to tell us a little bit about community, how it started in the household, because you're a true giver. You're like that light that can light 100 candles and still keep your flame. So talk to us about community and how did community get involved? Now that you're a young artist, you start expressing these different mediums. How did it lead to community work and now giving back, which is a huge part of what you're doing right now, I see.
yeah. So when it comes to community, like growing up in my neighborhood, I grew up and I was the super's daughter.
Mm.
So you already know,
Mm.
people knew me. Everybody's like, oh, esa la hija del super, oh, esa la hija de
Mm.
Rafaelina. Like everybody already knew who I kind of was. So that made it easy to kind of get involved into the community. We used to like trick or treat right here in this building back in the day. So I always felt like you needed people around you.
Mm,
Like even when I was really little, people used to be like, "Oh my God, like you're such a great kid." You know, the grandma of the block that's always sitting on the stoop, always giving me compliments, always
mm,
saying like, "You're so respectful, stay in school." And I definitely needed those voices around me, right, reminding me that like, Luce, you are special. Luce, you're like, so well behaved. Because growing up in this environment, it's easy to go either way, right? And no tea, no
facts.
shade. If you do, you could come back.
Yeah.
But
Ooh.
it's a lot growing up in like this quote unquote dysfunctional, right? Because we learn how to function
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
dysfunction.
Dysfunction. Mm,
Yeah, and also like I grew up in the building. Like my whole family was here. My aunts are upstairs on the fifth floor. My cousins used to live here. Like my mom's best friend used to live upstairs. My grandma lives across the hall. My brother lives across the
mm,
hall. So my
mm,
family has always had this like really big focus on like community and sticking together as a family. So when I was moving on through school, right, my friend groups were like one of the most important things for me. But as an immigrant, it was challenging because I used to have like my mom and my family. You can't trust people.
mm,
You can't trust
mm,
everyone. Be careful. Those people really aren't your friends. Like you can't trust anybody but your family. So it was always like a constant battle of
mm,
like, oh my God, I have to pick and choose who's the highest. But eventually, as I kept getting older, especially when I got into college,
mhm,
I started realizing I was depending a lot more on my chosen family and people who understood me in a different way than my family.
mm,
So that also is what led me to community work. When I got into college, I found like an amazing group of young people with the Young Democratic Socialists of America,
mm,
and that that jump started so much. Like not only was I learning so many new things, and again learning more language to name everything I was experiencing throughout my life, but I was
mm,
able to like sit in communion with people who I didn't have to explain myself with, and that was the most amazing like just introduction to like quote unquote political work or like
mhm,
community work,
mhm,
social
mhm,
activist work, because I wasn't introduced to a group of people that were always like challenging me. Instead, like they gave me, it was almost like a forum to kind of like figure things out and like rank things in a system of like how they affected me, or like different things that sparked ideas in me. Um, and from then, also being a part of theater,
mm.
community is what we got. If you are not part of the team, if you are
That's
not
right.
locked in on the ensemble, the performance is not going to give what it has to give. And that comes like we could talk about that from the performance side, and you could talk about that from the creative side too, right? If I have, if I'm working on a new piece of theater, right, and the playwright is like not doing what they have to do, of course that's going to mess up the synergy of the entire group. So,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying? Like community collaboration and also like accountability and responsibility have been big things for me for years now, building up these like, theater skills and habits.
Wow, Luz, that's it. You got bars. You still got the bars. We're hearing them. We're feeling them. And thank you for your presence and your energy. You also mentioned something really huge where you had to kind of make a pivot, right? You spoke about family saying, I come from a West Indies household, Caribbean, so similar, where they're like, oh, you can't do. How were you able to find that confidence to walk your own path, right? You also mentioned something really, really pivotal. Some people that grew up in these environments that you grew up in, also, they might have made a hard left, you
Mm,
were able to stay grounded and centered and kind of listen to that inner that heartbeat, I'm gonna say, in you that guided you and I'm sure protected you and probably saved you from a lot of things that some of our mi gente, our people, they fall victim to.
yeah.
So how were you able to keep that confidence and make those decisions even though family might have said, nah, stay away from this? How were you able to build that up and really just trust your inner guidance and that source energy that is within us all? But I feel
Hmm.
like you were able to activate that in yourself or become aware of it. So if you could give us any insight into that,
Yeah.
please let us know.
Funny enough, I feel like, I don't know, I always had something in me telling me something better was out there and that I was going to be able to create something better for myself. So, like, I used to spend a lot of time alone as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So, I used to write. I used to write and I used to write and I used to write.
Mm.
And funny enough, like, it was hidden from everybody. I never called myself a writer until I got to college and I was like, yeah, I'm a
Wow.
poet. Like, because I started taking the creative writing classes, right? And like in my
Yeah,
mind, I
yeah,
was like, yeah,
yeah.
now it's valid. Like
Ah,
now my writing is valid, and I can say I'm a writer.
ah.
But when I was a kid, like I was writing, and like I used to be so scared of anybody finding any like piece
Mm,
of a paragraph of a poem. So I used to like make sure that I hid my things. And for a while, I felt like it was something secret, something that I had to protect because I felt like if I let anybody in, they were gonna throw me off or like they were gonna like, persuade me to like let it go or do something else.
oof.
So it's something I really used to just like keep private to myself. And like I said, that teacher, Miss Torres, she
Mm,
really she really kept me grounded and going. I remember there was one time in eighth grade that I got into like a lot of trouble. And it was a moment of just like weakness. I let my anger get to me and like I had like a blackout moment. So it was to the point like I was saying things and I didn't even know what I was saying anymore.
mhm, mhm.
And she was the person that was able to like bring me back from that by just reminding me who I was. Like I remember she pulled me to her office and she was so angry. This like short Puerto Rican woman with curly hair. Like
Mm,
if you see her in the street, you won't be afraid of her. But when she opens her mouth,
bah, that fire.
like
Yeah.
it's over.
Yeah.
So, she pulls me to the side and she's like, Luce, like, I heard this and that and the third. And I was like, yeah, like, it's whatever, like it happened. And she was not letting it go. And I will never forget, she told me, she was like, Luce, do you want to be a writer or not?
Mm,
And I looked at her and she was like, because you can keep going, like, you can choose like a good path for yourself. And I remember I started to cry like a baby.
wow.
I just started to cry because I felt ashamed because for so long this little secret was what I thought was gonna like propel me past everybody.
Mm,
And to think that like for a moment that I let it, because when you're a kid, everything feels so huge. So
mhm,
that little mistake or like that attitude that I have,
mm.
I felt like I had just betrayed myself. And she was
Woo.
that person that was able to bring me back from that moment. And, more than my mom ever could, more than my dad ever could, more than my grandma, like I respect and I love my family, but sometimes you really need those outside voices
Outside, yeah.
giving you that input. And that's also why I'm like, I want to continue working with youth because I understand that sometimes you just really need an outside voice telling you something for it to make sense. And yeah, I was lucky. I was lucky to have good friends around me that, kept me laughing and giggling and hanging out in the park and going to eat McDonald's instead of like, hanging out on a stoop or like introducing me
Mhm,
to things like too quick. So yeah, I was
mm.
always blessed to have a good community around me.
Wow, Luz, thank you again. You made some pivotal choices and give yourself that credit because a lot of people are faced with those options and they choose otherwise, right? I want to go into this now. I know a lot of your work, especially congratulations on your new gig. You're working with a femtor of mine, Martha Diaz, who helped me
Woo-woo.
publish my first curriculums and really step up and evolve. So I'm so honored for the work. A lot of work you do isn't in easy spaces and places. I remember seeing an amazing video you did in front of the Bronx courts when you were involved in social work, right? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of stories, Luz, that you keep. You are a keeper of stories. You are a griot, in my opinion. Like
Hmm.
and I know that you're holding space for a lot of young folk and the environments you're in. Not everybody could be there, Luz. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and I know you made certain choices, but how is that work? Give us a little bit of insight. I remember me and you having a powerful conversation about your work when you were doing social work and seeing kids brought to court, removed from their parents, in the very
Yeah.
neighborhoods that you grew up in. So I would
Yeah.
love for you to give a little bit of insight into that community work because yes, it's a lot of art of this, but it's a lot of things that weigh heavy on our souls and on our hearts. And this work is not
100.
for the weary, and you continue to dive deeper into it as a young woman. So I would
Mhm.
love to hear a little bit of insight into that world that you could share with us. Thank you.
Yeah, so before I was confident enough to choose like a career in in artivism or in art
Mm-hmm.
in general, I was always very just like worried, especially coming from an immigrant background. Like
Mm-hmm.
funny enough, my mom always encouraged me to pursue theater and to pursue art.
Mm.
Because like when I was in high school, I was like really just that's where I was present, right? I used to host concerts, I used to play the flute, I used to play saxophone, I used to sing in choir,
Mm.
I was in the plays, I was doing so much. So my mom seeing me like being able to like develop myself in that way, she was all for it. So when I was moving on to college, she was the one persuading me like do theater, which is such a blessing because usually you don't get that from immigrant parents. They're like,
Mm.
no, become a doctor, become a lawyer, become a teacher. And my mom in DR, she was a lawyer and a teacher. So I always felt like she was gonna
Ooh.
put that pressure on me of like, you have to be excellent, like academically. But yeah, she gave me the space to choose, and like she gave me that encouragement to choose. But for a while, I didn't know this passion for like social justice and for community. I didn't know how to channel it through theater. So for a
Mm.
while, I thought I wanted to like study political science and like do something along that
Mm.
realm.
Mm.
So that led me to like doing a lot of exploration, which is why I ended up in the Bronx Family Court back in the summer of
Mm.
2018.
Mhm.
So it was an internship with a restorative justice program called Strong Starts Court Initiative.
Mhm.
They're focused on um, stopping the separation of babies and toddlers from the age of 0 months to, I believe, 3 years old, because during that time, children, babies, toddlers, they create pivotal attachments to their parents and families that could be traumatic and cause
Mhm.
developmental issues, emotional issues as they're coming along. So it was definitely an extremely tough environment to be in. I had never been somewhere like that where like the stakes are so high. This is a child, a baby getting removed from their family.
Mm.
So, like literally from day one, the beginning of my internship, they were showing me around, like showing me the floors, like okay, this is the courtroom, this is our offices, this is how you move around. And I'm in the elevator with my supervisor, and there's like the first thing I see, literally scared the crap out of me because it was like such a scary thing. I was in the elevator with this woman, and I thought she was gonna get attacked by the police officers who were escorting her downstairs, and it was so sad. She was holding this big binder like full of court documents, and she's just screaming, and she's like, "You guys want to take away my kids? Like I wish that my father was here when my father was here. Like." He used to help me. Now people just want to take, like, she was having a meltdown. And,
Mm.
we were in a tight space in that elevator. And I remember it was just silence. And even the people that were with this woman were just letting her, like, completely break down. Like, to the point where, like, there's papers falling on the floors. But long story short, like, I was able to get off the elevator with my supervisor. And the first thing she asked me, she's like, "Do you think you'll be able to handle this for the summer? Because this is like hard work happens here."
Ooh.
And I looked at her and I was like, I think so. Like, I think I'll be able to do it.
Mm.
It was an extremely hard summer. Like, I was able to do a home visit. And I saw, like, firsthand the failings of ACS, right? Like,
Yes.
how can you put a family into a shelter, but you don't even like you're not giving them blankets or food? Like they've been living there for 2 days and you didn't even make sure they had bread. So like
Mm.
me and the social worker I was with, we had to go to the supermarket to get them food. Like
Mm.
so I was in a position where I was seeing the shortcomings of the systems that apparently were supposed to be helping people, right? Like I was in the court, like packing bags of diapers and wipes and onesies for
Mhm.
new moms. We were giving MetroCards to new moms that were being court mandated to like go to a program, but nobody's telling her like, "Oh, you're missing work for this program. We're gonna give you a stipend. Oh, you need to get from Brooklyn to, you know what I'm saying, the Bronx to this program. We're gonna give you a MetroCard." So it was very eye opening to be a part of an initiative that was like, it was dealing with the threads that were like just being left hanging, right? And
Mm.
that was very interesting to be there. It almost felt like we were just like crisis mitigators.
Mm.
So it's like, yes, we have an impact, but we're really just putting bandages on the problem. So having that
Ooh.
experience at just 17, I was like, well, no, at 18, I was just like, yo, I don't think I want to be a participant like in these systems that way. I don't think I want to be like a judge and have to work within like
Mm.
these rules or like a lawyer or a social worker. So yeah, that started like within me like a real big disdain for authority.
Mm.
I'm like, how you gonna tell me what to do when you're not doing it right? Like
Ooh.
you're supposed to be the change maker. Ain't no change happening. Like you have people like me doing crisis control. So yeah,
Wow.
that was a really like eye-opening experience that taught me that sometimes when you want to make a change and you're thinking about going into these institutions, you have to be very careful with like, where you place like your mental health on the priority list. And for me, when I finished that internship, I knew that that was not a space that I could work in
Hmm.
actively for years and years and do the kind of impact that I wanted to do. So, but yeah, funny enough, now I'm right across the street at the
Right,
probation
literally
center.
at the probation center. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Luz, you're a real fighter, and I thank you for that journey. There was so much insight in that story as a young woman coming out of college and then, or going into, you were still coming out of high school at that point, 17, 18,
Mhm.
and then you put yourself immersed, and this was in your own community, and you really touched
That
on
was the
something.
saddest part.
Mhm,
That was the saddest part because I was able to do a court visit to the Queen's family court.
mhm.
It's a completely different world, dude.
Yeah.
Like the amount of respect and humanity that they show people there is completely different from what's going on here in the Bronx. Like even just the facility. In the Bronx there's no windows. If you go to the Bronx family courtroom, there's no windows. And in Queens, it's literally this beautiful glass
Yeah.
building that the
Yeah.
sun is coming in from like every single direction. And there's artwork. And like, in the Bronx, we just have like the dirty fluorescent light in a building with no windows, and everybody's like freaking
Wow.
out. And it's super old and there's like wooden benches. Meanwhile, in
Whew.
Queens, it's like super lavish.
Wow. And yeah, it's a newer building. I remember that building right over there on
Yeah,
Suffolk Boulevard. Wow. So like you're even bringing into something really deep about just the difference a zip code can make, just the difference these things can change, and how in certain
100%.
areas people are given services, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
these are supposed to be services that are allegedly helping the children, Unfortunately, my aunt lost a child through ACS cases because she was saying something and someone reported her. And then I used to work for Bronx Defenders
Mm,
where they would do pro bono services for sometimes was a young teenage cat smoking a blunt in front of projects, and now they're trying to evict the grandmother because she lives with them. And these things that were just like, when you actually look at humanity, they're wrong, but
yeah,
they're written in a certain way where it's like this happened, this, and it takes away the human factor, and people are looked at as
exactly.
less than human. So I know your work is deeply related to that. I want you to expand on it where now, like you said, you're across the street
Mm-hmm.
working with Martha Diaz, working with the Neon Arts, and this is now a combination of youth that are dealing with probation services. I've done some work over there and a couple other boroughs with it. But how is this work now? Because I'm seeing the combination, right, of all your past experiences almost culminating in this new position that you have
Yeah.
with that. Can you tell us a little bit about how this journey is going? I know this is a recent shift for you, but
Mm-hmm.
also it's kind of marrying those two worlds that you have of art and community and your social justice work. So how is this work treating you so far? How is it new and different from your past experiences with the court systems and these kind of things? Let us know a little bit about the current situation, about how it's flowing for you now.
Yeah, for sure. So we're 2 weeks in. We're going into our third week of the project,
Mhm,
and it's been a lot of fun.
mhm,
Getting back to it. So before I was doing this, I was doing a marketing fellowship,
mhm, mhm,
which was like, in a super corporate setting. And even though being in a corporate setting is super lavish, it was really nice to have, a kitchen where I could make coffee and tea wherever. But
mhm,
I was not I was not being fulfilled the way that I know that I needed. Like I wasn't being
mhm,
challenged and like stimulated enough to actually be happy in that environment. So,
mhm,
like funny enough, before I even started the gig with Martha, I had been to it was like an information session where they were talking about the program. And I
mhm,
remember like just being in the space, I was like so my mind was just so active. I had met Martha, I had given her my name, like I introduced myself. I had met like P.O. Oliver, who's the person that, has been nice enough to work with them to make the studio initiative a thing. So for
mhm,
those who don't know, we want to open up a community recording studio at the 161 Probation Center, which
mhm,
is an amazing goal, and it would be a beautiful addition to the community. The program works with youth and trains them in how to use studio equipment. This this round, we're also teaching podcasting and social
Captain.
media
Mhm,
so that they can learn how to like broadcast and market themselves and use equipment. So it's a beautiful, beautiful program, and I am so proud to be a part of it. And yeah, it mixes in like students who are a part of the community and those who are on probation,
mhm,
and it's a beautiful mix. Funny enough, you don't see like issues or really divisions between them,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, they still have that like that student energy of like exploration and wanting
Mhm.
to know more and wanting to participate. Um, but working in this capacity is very different, right, than working right across the street at the Bronx Family Court.
Mhm.
Even like the way I was describing the facility, at the probation center, like it's completely different. The lights are
Mhm.
bright. There's
Mhm.
windows in the front. They
Mhm.
have artwork on the walls. It's completely different. When you walk into the studio, there's like a beautiful, colorful mural. So
Mhm.
even though it is still like justice related, and the cops, they walk around, but they're walking around laughing, and
Mhm.
sometimes in like like really super positive energy, like they table a lot there, like different career options.
Mhm.
So it's a justice environment, but it's very much focused on positivity and moving people forward. Very different from like the feeling I was getting in the building across
Mhm.
the street. And working here has been also very different from like working within the DOE. Because when I
Mhm.
was working in the high school, along from like, directing the musical, I was also working as a school aide, and I was
Mhm.
working on the attendance team. So I was working with guidance counselors and social workers trying to help students like come to school that had low attendance.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
working in that capacity with them was very challenging, because from the very like first moment I had a meeting with them, I realized that they were people who had been in the system maybe a little bit too long, and they kind of
Mhm.
they conformed and accepted these ideas that some kids are just bad. And that's something I reject off jump. There's practices that like I don't believe in when it comes to like punishing youth when they do something wrong, or like when they make a mistake. So it's definitely different being in that like punitive space with people who believe in punity, people that believe like, oh, parents, and they used to say things like this all the time. Oh, in my day, if those were my parents, me hubieran dado una pela. Like my parents would have beat the
Mhm.
crap out of me, and I would have had to come to school. And it's like, okay, but that's not, we don't want them coming to school with that energy, right? Because when they come to
Yeah.
school with that energy, mad at their moms and their pops, they're gonna come and they're gonna fight, and you're gonna, label them the problem child even more, right? So now working on this project with someone like Martha and Ryan and Amber, people who have a different lens of like what we can do in this world, and people who are creative, it's a lot less like punitive, right? We don't look at them from this point of view of like, you're a problem child or you're doing something wrong. We're coming from the perspective of like, these are skills that we can all develop, and you guys can have careers from being creative and have agency, and be an advocate and be vocal and use your voice and your creativity to make a change. And in the DOE, it was a completely different story. I felt like most of the time they wanted me to like, I don't know, try to like push the agenda that like the school system was for them. And I felt so uncomfortable, because I was working there and I was sitting there talking to youth like, you have to come to school, you have to graduate. But at the end of the day, I didn't believe what I was saying,
Mhm.
because I know I was just a participant in the system not that long ago. So I know how you feel. So I was
Mhm.
coming at it from like, it felt so fake and it felt so forced.
Mhm.
And I felt like it was aging my soul being there,
Mhm.
because I didn't believe in what I was doing at that point. Like, yeah, okay, kids should come to school, but at the end of the day, how do you want me to tell this girl who just had a baby and she's now a sophomore and she's trying to figure out housing, that she has to come to school because school is so important and she has to graduate? She got real life stuff going on. And like working in a building with teachers who like are just so rude, that will call out a student in class, like a student that doesn't come to school, how are you gonna, when they walk through the door, say, oh, look who finally showed up. It's nice for you to get
Mhm.
here. They're gonna walk right out that classroom and they're gonna get the fuck out, because what the hell?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not motivating them, you're not welcoming them in the way that they're supposed to be welcomed and motivated. So working in that system, it's completely different from what we're doing now. Being able to tap into youth without all those like DOE protocols and like all that
Mhm.
red tape around it, it's a lot different. Like being able to have like real relationships where I don't
Mhm.
feel like I'm just like a mandated reporter, right? Because
Hmm.
when you work in the DOE, they push a lot of like, if they're telling you these type of things, that you
Report
have
them.
to talk, yeah,
Yeah.
report it. You have to tell the social workers. You have to this, that,
Yeah.
and the third. And now it's a lot more different. Now I can actually form relationships with these students
Hmm.
and not have to be afraid of like, if somebody finds out that they told me this, they're gonna be like, why didn't you report it to this? Because the
Yeah.
systems we have don't work. So
Woo.
me reporting it is only gonna do them more harm than it is good. Like, you
Mhm.
know? So now it's like operating from a completely different like lens, and yeah, I'm finding so much joy in it.
Wow, Luz, you're really, really have taken a beautiful journey. I'm noticing a common thread in these systems, court
Mm,
system, school system, probation system, right? And it's ironic that you said out of all of these, the probation ones seem to be the most, the one that you have the least red tape because
yeah.
I speak about this a lot, Luz, and you're a perfect one to ask this question. Systemic reform versus abolition, right? I gotta
Mm.
go there with you because it's you, right? Do you think these systems that are clearly rooted in some form of oppression can be reformatted into something, or do we need to break them down and start new systems? I got my thoughts on it, but you've been through a lot of them. The DOE, these things are crazy. The medical system, everything, the immigration system, right?
Yeah.
I want your thoughts. I'm not going to say much, but just go in on there and talk about systemic reform because a lot of times people think we got to change this. Are we putting our energy in the right places, or do we need to build a new? Talk to us, Luz. Let loose.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
So I have just like funny enough that you bring this up. I have like an old Snapchat video. I think I was like
Okay.
18 and I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth and I was ranting that day. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, there's no such thing as reform.
Mm.
You can't use the master's tools to get out of their
Ah!
systems. So that's my answer to you right there. Like even in the
Yeah.
probation center,
Hmm.
right? There's a lot of POs that are in favor of this movement, right? Of
Hmm.
moving more community centered and opening up the probation center to not just like parolees, but everybody in the community, right? Like we're working on like putting together signage and creating art that's going to attract more people to the center because, thankfully there are those people there that are pushing for it, but I've
Hmm.
heard that there's also pushback from
Yeah.
people who have more of a traditional mindset that are
Hmm.
like, oh, like these programs are cute, but at the end of the day, like, there's criminals out here and there's violence. And like, there's people who are still very much attached to that. But
Yeah.
yeah, we've gotten lucky that like neon arts exists in this space. And the Renaissance Youth Center has done so much work to make sure that these programs
Hmm.
are reaching like, the communities that they need. But yeah, even there, right? I just gave a perfect example.
Hmm.
Some people are in favor of it, some people are pushing back, and they're not necessarily content with the space being used by community. And you can kind of,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? You can kind of see that from the way like that. Like we have to use the facilities. There's still like a lot of red tape. So like
Hmm.
even getting a lock on the door is something that they have to do with like, through their systems and their mediums and like, still having to like get approval for things. So, it proves to be limiting as much as it is an opportunity to like grow something there. So it's like you have to work and it's a balance. It's a give and
Hmm.
take always. And it's beautiful that it's happening, right? But like you said, like we should abolish these systems just in general and like reframe them and like rework them and try to find a different lens. Something
Hmm.
really powerful. It's a little off topic, but something really
Good.
powerful that I saw recently was, I think it was, uh, I don't know, I think it was an inmate in Cali
Hmm.
who donated their entire salary. I think it was like $17 that they
Hmm.
made from like prison labor, and they donated it to a Palestinian cause. And
Hmm.
that's something that has been like just like living in my mind for days and
Hmm.
days and days,
I heard that story.
how
Yeah.
someone still with like so little, quote unquote, so little, right? Those $17,
Hmm.
they they are like pushing past even like probably like the mental, um, that voice in their
Hmm.
head that's telling them like, oh, this is small and insignificant. Just being able to push past that and be able to do something, right? Like I've always heard, if we all just gave $1, You know, if we all just gave $17 to something like that inmate
Mm-hmm.
did, the only thing that they, you know what I'm saying, have to live off of, like the world would be completely different. So, you know, when we're even seeing like revolution within these systems, it's something insightful and powerful how someone who's, you know, not choosing to participate in the system of prison is actively fighting against that same repression in another way, helping somebody else. And like, you know, I hope that that's something that comes out of this work in the probation center,
Mm,
being able to like inspire those parole officers that don't feel like this is, you know, efficient, or like it's a way to create actual change that you'll be able to see. Like hopefully it'll cause, you know, more people not to get readmitted into incarceration, right? Which is the goal.
mm.
So it's like fighting it from within. We can try, but at the end of the day, that man is still an inmate in prison, making like making slavery wages, you know. So we can't continue to simply think we can fight from within. We have to destroy these things and build something new in its place.
Ooh, Luz, you got the bars. That's all I'm gonna say. I knew you would go in, and I appreciate your honesty as someone who has so much experience, even at a young age, of dealing with so many different systems. There's a common thread. Before we go into our
Mm-hmm.
creative portion, I do want you to give us any insight or tools that you've been using. Obviously, even though you're a very young person representing very hard, you have a lot of experience in what you do. I'm always blown away every time I speak to you. What are some things on the very simple level that individuals can do to start this way? Because I think so many times people give their energy either unconsciously or subconsciously to other things to be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
but you mentioned everything from the dinners to the talking to somebody to having a friend group, and a lot of these real tangible answers that are overlooked because like you mentioned with the inmate, oh, it's just 17, it's just me and my friend cooking dinner. Sometimes people feel it's not enough, but like you said, if
Mm.
everybody just did these little things, we would have dramatic change very quickly.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to give some insights about tangible steps people can do, because there's so much things that I know you have just mentioned in this conversation that are accessible to all, whether you have, because your time is one of your most valuable resources, and how you use your time is crucial. And thank you
Yeah.
again for all the way you have been dedicating your time to yourself and others. So give us any insights on that, and then we'd love to hear a piece from you after
Mm-hmm.
that and see what we can do. But thank you again, Luce. This has been such a great one. It went by like 2 minutes.
I
Crazy.
know. At first, I was intimidated by it. I'm like, an hour? Oh my God, what am I gonna
Nah,
say?
see, we
But
had to do it. We had, we'll go a little over if we need to, because this is very important information, and we want to give whole space for your wisdom. So thank you, and
yeah.
yeah, please let the people know, some of the resources and tools that we can use on a level. So
Mm-hmm.
keep doing that.
So for sure, keep a planner,
Mm.
because if you don't plan, if you don't have things written down, they're not gonna happen. Even if you tell yourself they will, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna finish that day and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I was supposed to call the company, or like I was supposed to call this, or
Mm-hmm.
you know. So plan. Try to journal as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I am very like I'm very cautious with like what I expose my mental to. So I'm like very
Mm.
selective with the actual music that I have on my phone. Like I'm the type of person that if we're in a party, I could listen to whatever. But the music
Mhm,
that gets downloaded and is on my
mhm,
phone, you know,
mhm.
I have like a standard to it, which is
Mm,
like I don't want anything that's like pushing negative narratives on me. I've
mm,
also like I've also been going through like my Instagram and my social media and just like unfollowing, and being very selective with like whose content, what type of content am I actually seeing? Because
mm,
even if
mm.
we think that it's not that big of an impact on us, because when we close our phones, it's gone. Not true at all. You know what I'm saying? Like
Digesting.
if in your headphones you keep listening to somebody talking about Gucci and Prada and all these things, you're gonna start to actually think that these brands mean something, and you're gonna ingest that, and you're gonna want to copy that. You know? So like I'm really big on that. And even when I do engage in something, right, that's like not that wholesome, I
Mhm.
always like, you know, I always make that distinction of like, yeah, that's fun, but that's not me, you know, and
Mm.
I don't want
Discernment.
to carry that into me. And because I've seen, you know, all the negatives in that, right? Like even when I was in school, like seeing people pick on each other and being picked on for not having like Jordans or like the name brand. So that's something that's
Mm,
always stuck with me since I was a kid, like just staying away from stuff like that.
mhm,
And honestly, staying away from people who like want that and like that's their thing. Um, so those are a
mhm,
couple ways. Let me keep thinking though. I feel like there's just so much more. Oh, I spend a
mhm,
lot of time with my
mhm,
grandmother. So my
mhm,
grandmother, she's 83. I spoke about
mhm,
her in the beginning,
mhm,
and her health it's pretty good now. She was having some complications, and we're learning how to manage her diabetes better. But like even
mhm,
spending time with my grandma is some of the most grounding work that I do because I'm able to. Sometimes I even just sit in
mhm,
silence and like look at her and like what she's
mhm,
doing. She's constantly reminding me to like relax, to calm down. She tells me to like literally these are her words, and sometimes I'm surprised with the things she says. She's like, "Oh, calm down your nervous
mhm,
system." And like breathe in through your
mhm,
nose and breathe out through your mouth. And I'm like, okay, grandma, look at you, like bringing
mhm.
back, those comfort
She,
traditions.
she's
So
there.
yeah, I love being connected to my family, even though we don't always see things eye to eye and we have different ideas. But
Mhm,
it's something that keeps me grounded and also learning like their mistakes and how can I make them better and how can I do better. And that's kind of like a passion that I have right now in my life. Is like it's not it's not as simple as just saying I'm gonna break the generational curses. I'm the type of person that like I want to go in and like into your mental almost. Like I have this saying, and like my dad, he's a stroke survivor and he's disabled now. And like
mhm,
I've always said, like, oh my God, I wish I could go into like your body and like just like live in your skin and feel what that's like. So I'm very like hands on and I love to like experience people's stories through that way, through that lens of like not just imagining if it was me, but like putting myself in that position. And that's what connects
mhm,
that humanity for me. So I love to do that with my family and I love to do that with my grandma. Like even her stubbornness, right? Even like that old lady stubbornness, that old lady ego. It
mhm,
transports me to thinking about like what was she like when she was young and like,
mhm,
understanding how she went from point A to point B. I think it's
mhm.
very important because, we grow up with our families. So
Yes.
even if we think we're not taking certain toxic things from them and certain lessons, we are. And
Mhm.
something I've like avoidance is a big thing that I'm trying to change right now in my life because I learned avoidance from my family. Like that was like a generational trait that I think we all have and has been like persisting and existing and is thriving within our family. So that's something I'm really trying to like change. So I've been like journaling and trying to be real present and not avoiding the things that I feel. Like very much having conversations like right away instead of waiting to be like, yo,
Mm,
you made me feel some type of way. I'm kind of just like, yo, that was weird. Like we need to talk about this right now.
mm,
So like trying to break those generational, curses and cycles in my life have been very just very healing and it's given me space in my head and in my
mhm.
life to just think and do other things, right?
Wow, Luz, man, so many gems. I want to recap a few of them because you dropped like 50 on them. Hit them with the 50 clip. Once again, the generational relationships, understanding from the elders and the youth. She's around people younger than her, her age, and that generational relationships. Big gem. Watch what you are ingesting, whether
Mm-hmm.
that is food, whether that is music, whether that is people. Those things are having a profound effect on yourself,
Yeah.
regulating your nervous system. Know when your body, there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. That book changed my life to know that you have intuition and certain things are guiding you. Don't go there. This person's off, and you might not have anything happen to you, but there's a intuition that sometimes we ignore, and that can literally become deadly. Also, you
Mm-hmm.
said about self-regulating, almost knowing when you need to have that hard to have conversation, being like, I'm gonna address this. I am not gonna store this in my body. I'm not gonna just hide this and tuck it away because if it tucked away, it's like a jack in the box. It's just gonna
Mm-hmm.
pop back up, like you mentioned in your earlier story when you blacked out and you spazzed. I'm sure it wasn't just one moment. It was different moments that add up. And a lot of times, like a sponge, we don't rinse, we don't have those
Yeah.
conversations of saying we don't feel seen, we don't feel heard, we felt disrespected. And then usually it's held in till it adds up to a level where it becomes a physical confrontation or someone guilting, shaming, or blaming somebody.
Mm,
Another thing you
mm,
mentioned too was there is ways that we can make the change, whether that's our friend circle, whether that is being mindful of what we are taking in, what we're listening to. A lot of these things go so unnoticed. Take a walk, like you said, take a deep breath, like Abuela said. Those things are real and they're so simple
yeah.
that they get overlooked and they don't cost anything to say, I'm going to turn off this music. I'm going to sit with myself for 10 minutes, 15 minutes to check in with myself and see where I'm at. I'm going to go down that block and do 30 minutes of exercise. And these things can change our lives, but they're not being pushed. The pill is being pushed. Take this distraction. You also said about staying away from escapism and not trying to hide. Face
Yeah.
that. They said when your demons are coming for you, don't run from them. Stop and turn around and say hello. You know what I mean? Greet them and see what's up because
Mm,
they're valuable insights to every experience in our life. Luz, man, you drop so much nuggets and gems. I do
yeah.
want to hold space for some of your creativity in case you want to share a poem, song, or something of this venture in this. The floor is yours. If you choose to, of course. Anybody who is in this chat, if you got questions for Luz, please hit that question mark with the thought bubble or the speech bubble or type it right in there and we can get it. As we wrap this up, we want to be mindful of Luz's time, but we're here. And if there are any questions in the chat, please shoot them in. And thank you again, Luz. And please, yeah, take it away and let us know if you want to share a piece and what it is. And
Yes.
thank you again
Yeah.
for everything you're doing.
So I will be sharing a poem um, called Outsider Looking In.
Mm,
It's a piece I wrote a while back about being from the Bronx, specifically like being from Fordham, right? My neighborhood, my hood.
mm-hmm, mm,
And it's cool. I've been living here now at this point, y'all, for 22 years.
mm,
Well, almost 22 years
mm-hmm,
in the same neighborhood. So it's
mm-hmm.
really interesting to see the
You got
changes.
roots. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, how would you like to be the outsider looking in? Through my eyes, my skin? Would you like to walk the same streets along with my feet, trying to analyze me through the dialect I speak? Why
Mm.
the word your utters from my lips with pride? How could there be pride in the boogie down, the city of hip hop, the borough founded on the backs of poor black mothers, the matriarchs, the barrio founded on food stamps and WIC, the buildings and alleyways that once got burned down by greed? They serve as homes to the street rats, los desamparados, and those hungry for more than the cans from the Church of St. Nick. The unrepresented borough serves as a home to us with disdain for authority. This borough of the forgotten, this borough of the rotten, this land of the belittled is our home, and we're hungry for more. We want peace. We no longer want to be martyrs to your class war.
Woo. Woo.
That's the little
Wow.
piece.
What's the name of it again? Give us that title one more time.
Outside looking in.
Outside of looking in from the boogie down. Luz, you are a gem. You are a jewel. And ooh, this hour went by like grease lightning on
I
crack back in the
know.
80s. So this went so fast. Yeah, wow. I want to give the floor to any questions. We got 9 people in here. We got fire emojis coming out. We got stars. We got everything. We got
That's my
moonshine.
community right there, right?
That's
Again, that's
it.
my
The
community. They
people, we
pulled up.
love it. We love it. Everybody showing up. I got a question in the chat. Yes, yes, here we go. Best Bliss asks, do you think what you give to community is what you get?
Mm,
Or do we give to community because we know that it is our power? What
mm,
empowers your values? Hmm.
mm. Yo, Beth. It's
That's with
always
the
Beth
bars.
coming through, right? Like, shout out to Beth, no funny, because she got me this gig with Martha. So, love
Yeah.
you, Beth. You deserve all the praise. Um, but yeah, that's a good question, right? Because I was previously talking about what it felt to work in that high school in the DOE. And I was in there creating community and like I was becoming more in communion with the youth. I found out real quick more than the adults in the actual building. So it became a struggle of like, okay, I love these kids and these kids love me, but damn, these adults give me so much like limitation, and they're putting me through so much stress. Like there's certain situations I would even call like, in a way bullying because I was the youngest person on staff. So there were moments, right, where I felt like I had to choose. And I was waking up in the morning like, oh, I don't want to go to work. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to deal with, Miss whatever and Mr. Whatever. But then I'm like, damn, but today I know that X, Y, and Z kids are gonna want to come to my office and chill with me during like lunch or whatever. And I constantly found myself like, in that battle. And I just I just learned quickly that like community and love, it takes over, right? It's like it's gonna
Mm.
lead you where it is that you're gonna end up being. So constantly in that struggle and in that fight of like, oh, do I want to go to work today? Oh, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? Thinking about certain kids literally got me out of bed, and I was
Woo.
like, okay, I gotta go do what I gotta do. And even making it through the day, like seeing one of the kids that I really love, like in the morning, that would like jumpstart my whole day, and I'll be good for the rest of the day. So it's like even when the full community is not appreciative of what you are doing, right? Like those adults in that building, I made my own inner, like smaller community, my smaller circle with my kids. And I miss them to this day. And to this day, they're telling me, like, Miss Luce, you have to come back. Miss Luce, you have to come back. We miss
Mm.
you. And like, still actively, trying to reach out. And, I had lunch with one of them the other day. And, it was just like being able to keep that alive. You have to really ask yourself at the end of the day, like, what matters the most to me? And in that situation, right, that was like, you could call it a gig that I was doing for a certain amount of time. And it helped me finish that gig. But I knew that once
Mm.
that gig was done, I had to remove myself because I couldn't continue thriving in this space because of those limitations. So, I love my kids. I'm still in communication with them. I have them on Instagram, I have their numbers. I try to see them when I can, but I don't want to be around those adults. So, it's not
Mm.
my job anymore. So it's about a balance, right? You have to pick and choose. You can't just say, okay, this is for community and I love helping my community, so I'm gonna give it my all and not worry about what that's gonna do to you. You have to find that balance and you have to say, I loved this. I can find this again somewhere else where I can build it, as I go on my own. So that's the
Woo.
answer.
Luz, thank you, thank you. I could listen to you speak all day. It's beautiful. Well, we're at our final section of the show. Thank you for spending overtime with us. We had 12:02. I appreciate you so much, and you bring so much. So I got a little riff going.
Oh,
If you feel like letting it loose, we got a request from Lizzie to Liz saying that they want you to let loose, you know what I mean? If you choose. But we got no excuse. But what you do,
mm-hmm.
I'll let it play for a bit. And if it connects
Uh,
to you, cool. And we'll bring it on home, y'all. Show some love. Let's see those fire emojis and those hearts for Luz, a true BX DR artivist. So I'll do my best to be quiet, let her let loose, and then we'll take it.
hey. Woke up today, feeling all strange. Who do I gotta be like today? Put on a show, keep my head low, walk around like I'm self-assured. Don't talk about what I don't know. Hey, del pueblo, heard you.
Woo! Yes. Yes, lose this. We got it. We got it. So be the light.
Hey,
Can you be the light? You're the light. You're the light. Okay, couple of bars from Luz. She's straight up in the Bronx. Grew up with a couple aunties, uncles, and aunts. Yo, pops was a super, so she keeps it super. Got the light in the court, how she had to maneuver. Lady with the
hey,
binder, about to catch a case. She told him, you could do it. You could get out of this place. She was up in the DOE helping kids feel safe. And she got that light to erase that race. She might have came from outer space, but I know that she got it. And she was dropping like a prophet coming out the projects, but it's bigger than that. Now a situation. She could school an officer at the Department of Probation from the DOE. You might be DOA. I remember she was kicking raps back in the day. Shout out to Miss Torres and also La Bruja. I know they helped you understand how you maneuver. It's 12:05. I don't want to hold
Hey,
you with time, but this is dedicated to Luce when she wrote her first rhyme. Like,
stop!
you
Why you
are the
hate that?
light. You are the light. You are the light. Luz, I can speak to you all day. You see, gang for life. We want you on the Artivist roster. We love and
Yes,
appreciate you. Woo! La Reina, the queen, she is here. Thank you, thank you. I've been taking his notes.
yes.
Thank y'all. I
Shout
told
out
her
to
I
you,
would do it.
why?
No, thank you. The goal is to hold space the same way I used to hold space for the youth. You guys are, I see so much of your story in my story, Luz. We appreciate you. Before we close this down, please let people know where they could find you if there's anything coming up. Once again, guys, hit the link in the bio for creativeexpressions.co. We're going to get Luz on the Artivist roster and make sure her work. And if you guys got community events, send them my way. We also have a group chat. Luz is a part of Decipher where we break it down. But Luz, take it away and let them know where they can find you. Any final announcements before we close it off? Thank you for spending a little extra time with us. Your time is highly appreciated and valued. But yeah, let the people know any final thoughts before we close this out.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. I appreciate you guys. Have a beautiful, beautiful Sunday. You can find me on my Instagram. You can add me, DM me. I can share my email, whatever. We need to get a collaboration going. So right now I'm working at the Neon Studios on 161. We're gonna have a showcase in June. I don't know how open to the public that'll be, but I'll post
Mhm.
about it if people can come. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to like doing new work. So anybody who has new ideas about, a theater piece, or I don't know, maybe it was a poem and then it turned into a monologue, and you need like a way to make it happen, or a way to like learn how to tell stories in a new way, I'm your girl. So yeah, just hit me up.
Woo! Thank you, guys. We were blessed to have the presence of Luz Marie here, and she is doing so much amazing work. Remember, she is tagged on this. If you're not aware, give her a follow, show her some love. These are real people in the community doing real work. And guys, trust us, these artists are all around your community doing that
Yeah.
worky work, putting in that work. They might not have a million followers, but art is more than entertainment. Art is a way to
Mm-hmm.
activate yourself. We are bigger than that. Big shout out to Luz. Remember those gems she dropped? Multi-generational relationships. Serve your community. Be a part of something. Know that you can't do this alone. You can be a part of something. Create the new. Don't wait for the old to change into something. Be the change. The power is in the people. The power always is in the people.
Mm.
Viva la evolucion. We out here. I could talk to this woman all day. Thank you, Luz. We're going to close this out, y'all. Hit us up at Creative Expressions. Click the link in the bio, but make sure you stay in tune with Luz. And we'll be making sure to put all her community events on the community event page. Hit us up to be added to the Decipher chat. It's all women this month. Thank you, Luz, for being lucky number 14 and representing for mi gente, my
Yeah.
people, all the way from DR to Fordham Road. We in the Bronx like a new pair of kicks. We out here. You know what I'm saying? All right, y'all. We going to do this. This was such a great interview, Luz. It's going to be there. We're going to put it on YouTube. If you want any information, send that out to Liz and we'll get you in there. Shout out to Liz, our admin from the
Awesome.
Boogie Down Bronx. We
Yes.
got big Bronx energy in the building. You already know. We're moving out here like River Park Towers. Big, big, big energy right here. All right, y'all. I can talk to this
All
woman all
right.
day. I'm cheesing. I'm smiling. Luz, enjoy the rest of your day and thank you for kicking it off with number
Wait,
14.
last gem,
Yes,
last gem.
please.
Don't take yourself so serious, right? Like working with youth, I've really learned that like so deeply is we really cannot take ourselves that serious. The way I've seen kids bounce back from things, I just feel like we have to learn how to not be so in our egos, and I guess it's kind of like fear. We have to let go of that fear, what people think about us, what people think about what we're doing, and just, stick to our guns and live and realize that the things that are stressing us are seriously not that big. They're that big because someone told us they were and they put us in that position, right?
Ooh.
So whoever owns the building tells you got to pay rent. That's literally a fake concept that they made up. Don't let that get to you too much, and take it slow.
Ooh, lose. Had to hit him with the -9s for that one. Yo, Luz got gems, y'all. We're putting consulting on your resume, yo. Yeah, we in it up there. We got new services. Luz, we need you on the CE roster. It's in the doc. Fill it out when you get a chance, or we'll send you
Gotcha.
another email. We need to keep spreading the amazing work you're doing. Thank you to everybody. Big shout out to Beth Bliss. Big shout out to Rainer. Big shout out to Alexia Blair in the chat. Jose on the gram. Inspiration. Lexi's in the building and Lizzie the Liz. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. Remember, there's all these Artivist Talks out here that are sharing amazing light. Find yourself a Luz in your neighborhood. Let loose. Just know that no matter in the deepest darkness, there is always a light, and that light is within you. I'm
Yep.
out here. It's 12:10. We're going to respect this woman's time and just allow everybody to get into their afternoon. You could tune into this conversation right here on IG Live. It'll be saved. And then make sure to tap in on all the amazing things we mentioned, y'all. Peace, love, unity, and la luz.
Bye, yo.
Peace.